In this lecture, let's look at some of the more complicated scenarios that cause subject-verb agreement errors. One of the most common causes of subject-verb agreement occurs when words come between the subject and the verb. So we have to keep in mind that interrupters do not change the subject-verb agreement. The most common of these interrupters are prepositional phrases and relative clauses because they need to be close to the noun that they modify. So a few examples here. The cereals in the pantry are made mostly of sugar. Cereals is plural, so the verb has to be plural. One of my friends is Italian. One is the subject, it's singular, therefore the verb is also has to be singular. Or the posters on my brother's wall include rock singers and monsters. Posters is the subject, include is the plural, third person plural verb. Another problem area with subject-verb agreement occurs when we have compound subjects. So, for example, if we have two or more subjects joined by the conjunction and, then we generally are going to use a plural verb. For example, yoga and biking are Lola's favorite exercises. Yoga and biking is a compound subject, so it expresses two ideas, therefore we had to use a plural verb, are. Ambition and good luck are the keys to success. Again, we have two ideas, ambition and good luck, therefore we have a plural verb. There are exceptions though. Sometimes compound nouns joined by and only form one idea or one subject, and in those cases we have to use the singular verb. So for example, my best friend and advisor is my wife. Friend and advisor is meant not to be two separate ideas but one idea that's defining the wife, so we use a singular verb. Ham and eggs is a good dish. Again, we're not looking at individual components, ham and eggs, we're looking at the composite. So it's singular. Ham and eggs is a good dish. Or peace and quiet is a rare event in my house. Again, the idea is peace and quiet go together, so it's a singular idea, singular verb. So you might say, well, how can I be sure that it's a singular idea or is it a plural idea? Well, consider the fact that these sentences are mostly formed with the verb to be. So look at the complement. If one side of the equation is singular, then most likely the subject of the sentence is also expressing a singular idea. So we use a singular verb. So if we look at our previous examples, if we look to the complement on the right side of the equation formed by the verb to be, my wife, a good dish, a rare event. They're all singular. So it's easy to say, okay, it's my wife, one person, and she is both my friend and my advisor. So single idea. One dish, the dish is ham and eggs. One event, peace and quiet. So that's an easy way to determine whether or not the subject is a compound subject that's singular or a compound subject that's plural. Another confusing area with compound subjects is when the subjects are joined by the conjunction or a combination with either or, neither nor, not only, but also. In those cases, the verb agrees with the subject closer to the verb. So, a few examples. Either the manager or his assistants deserve to be fired. Manager singular, but assistants are plural. Therefore, the verb deserve also is third person plural. It's plural to agree with the subject that is closest to the verb. The next sentence, neither the local authorities nor the National Weather Service is able to prevent people from chasing tornadoes. In this case, we have the reverse. We have a plural subject first, local authorities, and then we have a singular subject second, National Weather Service. Therefore, we use the third person singular verb is to or is able to prevent, to avoid a subject-verb agreement error. Basic rule, the subject closest to the verb determines whether the verb is singular or plural. Another area of confusion with compound subjects is when subjects are joined to other nouns by expressions such as along with, as well as, and together with. In these cases, the subjects are not considered compound subject. Therefore, the verb only agrees with the real subject. For example, the National Weather Service, along with many police officers, wishes amateurs wouldn't chase storms. The National Weather Service is a sentence subject, therefore it's singular, and therefore the verb has to also be singular, wishes. The along with many police officers can be totally ignored because it's not part of the compound subject. Or many amateurs, along with the press, chase storms. Here we have amateurs is a plural subject. Along with the press can be ignored because it's one of those interrupters that starts with the expressions that we listed, so the verb chase is plural as well. One of the most common subject-verb agreement errors, especially in speech or spoken English, occurs when the verb comes before the subject. The verb must agree with its subject even when the verb comes before the subject. Words that may precede the subject include there, here, and in questions, who, which, what, or where. So a few examples. Inside the storage shed are the garden tools. The subject of the sentence is tools. Inside the storage shed is a prepositional phrase. It precedes the verb, and then the verb is in the second position in the sentence, and the subject's at the end. So tools, the subject, plural, verb are must also be plural. At the street corner were two panhandlers. The same idea, a preposition comes at the beginning of the sentence instead of the subject. The verb comes next. Panhandlers is plural, so the verb also has to be plural, were. Or there are times I am ready to quit this job. This is one of the more common mistakes because we start with there or this or here or that, and then we, in our minds, haven't quite finished the sentence in spoken English. There are times subject plural, verb plural. Where are the instructions for the microwave? Again, instructions is the subject, plural, are is also the verb plural. So you've probably heard this before, things like, this is the instructions. In spoken English, this is just comes out automatically, and then as you're thinking, you say the subject, and it's plural. You now have a subject-verb agreement error. In written English, you can go back and correct it. In spoken English, you have to go back and redo the whole sentence to fix the error.